Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast. In a game of D&D, the players are represented by two separate yet equally important groups. The game designers who write the books and the dungeon masters who choose to ignore them in favor of their own house rules. These are their stories. I'm your host, Conor O'Brien, and joining me as always is my co-host, Mr. Martin O'Dwyer.
I honestly think that's the best one you've ever done. like you
Thanks,
got,
I wrote it myself, it's completely original.
you got like 3 words in, and I knew exactly what it was. Oh, you could probably
But the
tell
funny
that.
thing is, I don't even watch Law and Order. I don't.
Oh man.
I've seen plenty of episodes, but I don't watch it. Like my sister loves it now. My sister's
Mm.
big into it, and like I've seen an episode here or there, but I've honestly maybe seen less than 10 episodes of Law and Order.
Yeah, like it. I remember like when I was a teenager, I was weirdly into it, but it was around the same time as when like CSI and all that stuff was like really popular. So I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like watching like 4 different kinds of CSI, and then like 3 different Law and Orders, and then there was that one show called Numbers that was just about like a maths genius who was like solving crimes through maths. I'm not making it up. It was
I
both
don't remember this
it was both
at all.
weird and excellent and the most 2008 thing in the world. Um, there was other really weird like police. That was just the era of like really weird or mediocre like police procedurals, and then there was
Yeah,
like
I mean,
NCIS as well.
there's still some good. What's the one I always see? I got into a weird thing a while back because Tara was watching. Wait, I want to make sure these are in the same universe now. Is it Chicago Med and Chicago Fire and stuff? They are all in the same and they all
Yeah,
cross over and everything.
yeah.
And I got into I watched one clip. This is by the way, folks, just in case you're wondering, no, you got the right
Yeah.
podcast. This is the D&D podcast. We're just going to talk about crime shows for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But I was watching. I found a clip of Chicago. No, sorry. Okay, start again. Very old episode of I think Law and Order where there's a kid who's like a full-on psychopath, and he wins the court case and he gets off scot-free,
Mm.
and he comes out and he goes, "I'm really sorry, sir," and as he's walking away he smiles at him like knowingly, like
Oh
I
my
got away with it.
god, I've seen that episode.
Yeah, and then your man is, I forget your man's name. He's your man from is it Twin
Elliot
Peaks?
Stabler.
Yeah, and he pulls a gun and he shoots
Oh
the
no,
kid.
sorry. Elliot Stabler is the like male detective in SVU. The like really perpetually angry looking guy who was in that really weird movie where he hallucinated a pink Muppet elephant.
I'm thinking of Kyle MacLachlan.
Yes, that's who I was going to say you were thinking of. Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah,
He was in, yeah, he's really good in Twin Peaks and stuff like that. And
yeah. So he
yeah.
pulls the gun, shoots the kid, and I went in a spiral down YouTube then because the next one I found was there was a similar one they did on Chicago Med where there was a kid who'd like fallen down the stairs and
Oh my
hurt himself.
god, do you remember when Keith Barry was on CSI?
No.
the like the
Wait,
the magician like. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, he was on CSI Miami once.
Was he like was he an extra or was he?
he was like a suspect in the
No way.
episode. he like, oh god, this is just so ridiculous. Um,
That's so mad.
oh my god, it is Keith Barry, isn't it?
Keith Barry's a magician.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That he's sorry, illusionists, tricks. What's that? What's that line from Arrested Development? Uh, magicians don't do tricks are for whores. Magicians do illusions.
Oh, that's.
I'm definitely misquoting it, but man, that show was great.
I know I haven't seen Arrested Development in a long time, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's so mad. Honestly, though, if you go back like through like all those crime shows because they're episodic and they're self-contained stories, they cycle out actors and suspects and victims so often that you're bound to come across loads of them. I watched John Oliver did a special on it on CSI recently,
Oh, okay.
because apparently who's the guy who started all the shows, he writes for all of them.
Oh, is it like Guggen something?
Not CSI, sorry, I'm thinking of Law and Order. Who's
Oh, your man Wolf, something Wolf.
Dick Wolf.
What a
Uh,
name, man.
yeah, he brought it up because about how the show was made and stuff, and like
Yeah.
Dick Wolf is like really pro police, and
Mm.
like
You'd
vocally so.
never know.
Yeah, yeah. But like he does loads of interviews with him and stuff like that, and about how like loads of police are always complimenting him, going, "Oh, we love the show, you know, we loved all these storylines and stuff, and it makes us proud to see police kind of represented that way and stuff." But like he's said before, he's like, yeah, I'd never do like a show where like the police are represented as being crooked or whatever, because in order to film these shows in New York and stuff, you need help from the police, and they just won't give you the help if your show is representing police in a negative light. So it's basically like, as good as Law and Order is, it's kind of propaganda, because you can only make it if you show the police doing their job and justice being served.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine is the same, man. Like, I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but that is, I believe the term, I saw this term on Twitter once, and I absolutely adore it. Propaganda.
Propaganda, yeah, very much so. And like, again, I also love Brooklyn. I think it's a really funny show. It's really easy watching. It's great. But when they try to handle the tougher subjects, occasionally they kind of do. But like, there's that one time where like Terry was just walking in his own neighborhood, and he didn't have his badge on him, and a cop like pulled him and stuff. And it's like, later on, only after he showed him later on, hey, I am a police officer, did he like apologize and stuff. And he's like, that's not good enough. You still did it. Like, they kind of touch on those things. I never feel like they quite hit the mark, because the show is so silly. It's kind of hard to put a serious message in.
Yeah, it's not really that kind of show, I suppose. It's like, it is literally just like a goofball comedy. Anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of goofball comedies, what about our podcast, Martin?
Oh, indeed, nothing but shenanigans on our podcast there.
Yeah.
But yes, it's been a good week.
You were actually playing D&D yesterday, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. So I ran that encounter with the actually, I didn't mention it in this podcast because I know my players occasionally listen to it. And got caught rotten last time. I was like, no, they won't hear this, man. And then into the session one, my blood hunter was like, yeah, I threw on your podcast for 20 minutes while I was making dinner. And heard exactly what they're up against. But I had homebrewed this like empowered deep crow, ancient deep crow, basically.
Yes, yeah.
You got to use my new dragon mini for it, which was really fun. It was nice to have like an actual big mini to throw down.
Yeah, you got a black dragon, didn't you?
I did. I got an adult black dragon. No, sorry, a young black dragon mini is what it is.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a young.
So very cool. You showed me a picture, and the horns and everything are quite cool.
Yeah,
you got a really griffin as well.
Yeah, I got that. I got a diving griffin, and I got 2 Medusas. And they're all actually like really, really good quality sculpts. They're all the like WizKids minis. But yeah,
Nulter's Marvelous Miniatures, whatever they are.
Yeah, that tongue twister of a brand. Yeah. But yeah, no, it was fun. Got to do. It was. I think we got 5 rounds, maybe 6 rounds out of it, which was pretty great.
That's really good.
And had some interesting stuff.
Was it just them versus that one creature?
It was them, that buffed ancient deep crow, and then 3 shadow demons.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's good though. 6 rounds is a solid combat line.
Oh yeah, and like I actually downed. Well, technically I downed Mandroy, Mike's character. But because he has 14 levels of Wildfire Druid, when I downed him, he instead instead of going to 1, he's 0. He stayed on 1 hit point, and then he gained 70 temporary hit points from the Wildfire capstone, which was cool. Like, he got to, like, to be fair, like, fun for me. I got to technically knock him unconscious. Fun for him. He got to use that ability.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Wildfire Druids are so cool.
And look, perfectly enough. So this was like a mission my guys took on to get my blood hunters order to agree to side with to basically take part in the coming war, because they'd like traditionally stayed out of it after they got like massively like hunted and stuff by like various kingdoms throughout like history, just for being like lycanthropes.
You're doing the Mass Effect 3 thing where you have to get war assets together and bring all your armies to one place to fight the big bad.
Kinda, yeah. It's also just a thing that happens in fantasy, is let's all get our armies together.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, I mean, I did it in our first campaign as well. Came towards the end and you guys were like, okay, who are our allies? And you were calling in all your people from some you haven't seen in months and stuff, because that quest was ages ago, but you call in all your allies. It's cool to see just like, people come together and kind of fight the great evil or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. So they had to basically, to get them to agree to leave their keep and go to war, they had to kill this crow because it was like harrying the land around their keep. So they did that. They sealed the rift. Came back, got that done, and then ended on like a big piss up in the pub, in this pub that I just keep giving. I keep giving character development to a pub, and I can't stop. Help. Like,
What do you mean character development?
So it started off with them going, "Oh, we want to go to a pub in Dartford. What are the pubs called?" And I was like, "There's one nearby called the Parting Glass," and they're like, "Oh, great, we'll go there." And that was just like, I need a name. Parting Glass is a good name. And then they went to it. I was like, "Oh, what does it look like?" I was like, "Oh, it's good." And like, it's kind of like, it was kind of like dive bar-y, kind of crappy. So like I came up when I was describing it, I was like, oh, and oh yeah, and the sign was like the Parting Glass, but the G and the L in glass are both faded. And then that forever became the Parting Ass. And then there's a bartender who's just like constantly absolutely like hammered out of his mind. He is just done every time they come in, but he loves them. So like the first time they came in, they just kind of established a relationship, and they keep coming back to this place. So I just keep adding more bullshit to it because it's too much fun. So like 2 months ago when they came back there was like this prototype table that he had gotten off the back of a truck from a guy he knew, where it was like you put a gold coin in, and it was like a slightly tinkered version of the create food and water spell, and it would like create like food. It would like basically kind of like magically scan everyone and create their favorite food in front of them. But it was not exactly perfect, so I would roll percentile dice every time they would use it to see if it just broke and just did something wild, like random stuff, all that kind of stuff. And then this time when they came back, because these guys are now in the time between had since like saved this town from an invasion of werewolves and all this kind of stuff. They're very, very well known and well liked in this particular city. Right. So now the pub has gone from being kind of shitty to actually like really, really nice, because everyone who likes these people keep coming into the bar for the chance that they'll be there. And right. So like I was like, oh yeah, the bar has been entirely refurbished and replaced. All the fittings that were kind of dull have been dressed like shiny new brass. There's all these giant kegs of alcohol behind the bar now. And then like, it's like this guy, that was the other thing, like a bit before that, another time when they'd come in, I was like, nothing had changed in the bar except the guy behind the bar had replaced the crappy stool he was sitting on with this like really nice, like high backed, like red velvet chair with like gold arms and stuff. And like I just keep progressively adding more dumb shit to this bar for my own amusement.
That's fun though. I mean, I was only playing a bit of Dragon Age Inquisition there. I've been playing for a while, for a few weeks now. But there's a part in the game where you can make changes in the world. You can establish camps at different points around the map, or you can make improvements to your keep, or sometimes there'll be things like, oh, you're out in the world exploring. Oh, this bridge is out. Well, I can get my people to come in and repair the bridge so I can cross it. And it's nice being able to make those, seeing that you're having an impact on the world.
Yeah.
So it's nice as well that like they can keep revisiting this bar, and they know that because decisions they made, they decided to go here. They told people it's their favorite bar, so now it's everyone's favorite bar, and they see it getting better and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of thing I think that makes D&D so great, is that there's a lot of games that don't do stuff like that, like video games in particular. So the fact that you can hop into D&D and just be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I want to establish a thieves guild, and all of a sudden crime is on the rise in this town, and
by the end,
watch are cracking down.
Actually, by the end of that session, they had agreed to invest in the pub. Because they're
that's
like,
cool.
Because they're like level 14 characters now, and they have tons of gold. Mm-hmm. And so they were just like, literally, Mike was just like, hi, and I'll give you 1,000 gold to invest in this pub to make it nicer. And then just like out of the blue, like Steve was just like, I'll match that, 2,000 gold. We'll make it really nice, and we'll get into the details of what we want moved in and out of here without any questions asked later.
I mean, that's Mike in my game as well, though, because like Mike early on, when the rest of you were like, I want to silver my weapons, I want to get health potions and stuff like that, Mike was like, can I requisition a wagon and a mule to pull it, or whatever, or a horse to pull it? And I was like, I guess, yeah, there's a dwarf carpenter in town, I'm sure he'll do it for you. And he paid a lot of money to get a wagon made, and then he brought that wagon to a bigger city, which was a regular enough wagon. He brought it to a bigger city. They fitted like a steel frame to it, so it had like suspension and stuff. And he made it a little bit longer, and he fitted sleeping racks in the back of it. And he, I think there's a
ballista on it now, yeah. Yeah.
Because I think he did you rip oh you took it from a giant. I want to say an ogre had that ballista in his hand and you took
Yeah.
it and you fixed it to the top, so you have a working ballista on top of it. Um,
We also have an airship now. So I
you have an
think,
airship.
I think what
That's what I
was,
mean, because it started off with
yeah.
that wagon, and then that kind of became the quote unquote war wagon.
Oh god,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and then, oh, he also added armor plate
Yeah,
into it. I
like
want to say as well.
we're gonna have a mech by the end of the game. I'm convinced.
Yeah,
Like he did, like be prepared for a Facebook message going. Is there any way if I had an artificer we could like Transformers connect the skyship and the wagon and turn it into like a mech?
I'm just picturing like what is it? There's loads of stuff like this. I'm trying to think
Do you
of
know
one
like
example, but I
Optimus
can't.
Prime would like swap out his legs for rocket legs?
Y- I went to go and speak there and I choked. Um, no, I was thinking of like basically I don't know, sometimes you have like a big ship in like a sci-fi or whatever, like a spaceship,
Mhm.
and it launches one like shuttle pod or something like that, and or like it flies low to the ground and it
Oh,
drops
like
out the wagon.
or like the bat wing and the bat pod that can drop out of it and drive off.
Yeah, yeah, or like when you know in is this Age of Ultron when Natasha rides the motorcycle
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
the jet and stuff, like all these kind of things where you have a flying vehicle that can deploy the fast moving ground vehicle. And I'm just picturing that Mike will come to me and be like, "Hey, so can we put a hole in the bottom of the airship that we can fit the war wagon up into, and we can just fly down low and drop it onto the road and keep on going?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, sure, why not? I don't care."
That's high fantasy Knight Rider is what that is.
Basically, yeah. And then there was even there was talk about it for a while. He really wanted to make the wagon sentient. He was
Oh,
looking at
yeah,
like
yeah.
awaken spells and stuff like that. He wanted to make it one that it wouldn't need horses. It would essentially be a car because it would be able to move its own wheels.
Yeah, he
Um,
made a car.
I,
Yeah.
and then but it's in the shape of a wagon.
Yeah.
So you're still on that high seat perched up on the front. And like you're probably maybe still steering with reins, but there's no horses. You're kind of just pulling the reins and it's steering or whatever. Uh, and yeah, he had loads of ideas he wanted to do. He wanted to basically make it a machine of war. And then I gave you guys, all right, I didn't give you guys. I gave you guys the opportunity to buy an airship because you were at a place that basically makes both air and sea ships. Um, and you spent a lot of gold to do that.
Hmm.
And then since then, Wabu's been like, yeah, can we like add some new beds and get some furnishings in there and stuff. So it's a really nice, place when we're sleeping on the ship and stuff like
We
that.
did add a death rate to this one last week, didn't we?
How did I forget the death rate? Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, because you guys just recently Gavin lost his character Aerith and came
Mm,
back with his new character Cassie, who is an artificer, and
yeah.
you had plucked this gemstone eye from a cyclops named Brez, and the eye was able to do necrotic damage, like a beam of necrotic damage. Uh, and Mike was like, "Yeah, can we like fix this to the ballista and make it a laser ballista thing instead?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can maybe give it a." I was gonna say no, but then like obviously I was like, "Oh, but Cassie's an artificer, so yeah, probably you can give it a try, I guess." And I had him rolling and all that. They rolled fairly high, not super high, and I'm like, okay, it's gonna work. And I was like, it may break. It'll definitely shoot once, but you don't know how many more times it'll shoot because it might break, or you don't know if it was very much a 1 day rush job. Um, yeah, but I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, I'm just so happy to see the return of a character with higher than 22 base armor class into your campaign, and it's not my fault.
Yeah.
He can get
For
to
co-
30.
for context, honestly it's so easy when you're an artificer as well.
It's
For context,
so funny.
Gavin is playing an artificer. His base armor class is 23.
Yeah,
And he can shields to get that to 28, and I think he can cast something on himself to
Shield
get
of
it
Faith.
to. Is it Shield of Faith?
I think so, maybe.
Yeah, something anyway. Um, here's the thing. Like I only realized this during the week. So it happened last session that I realized how OP it was armor class wise, and I
Yeah.
realized after the session then. I'm like, oh, he's doing this to me because I was gonna play that, I think in his game, but I was gonna mix, I was gonna play, and I wasn't just doing this to like be a shitty player and like and just build something for the sake of it being super broken. I had this like really cool idea for a dwarf character whose family and everything were about the Forge god, naturally for dwarves. But in his world, it was a diesel punk world, and there's this new god that people started worshipping, which is like a
The
god of
machine god, right?
machinery and mechanics. Yeah, and she's kind of like started dabbling in that religion a little bit, and like she can see that there's good parts to both, and she's kind of stuck between whether or not she wants to be the traditionalist crafter or the more futuristic tech person. And so she's part artificer, part forge cleric.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And but like, because you get base increase stuff with the forge cleric and with the artificer, she had like stupid high armor class as well. Like again with things like shield and all that, I was able to get it to similar levels of what Gavin's looking at the moment.
Ooh man, this 30 armor class is still so ridiculous even just to say it. But I absolutely love that it's on my team. Like I am so happy that that's there.
Yeah, you only did a last campaign because I gave you that +3 shield,
that's true.
which
Yeah.
was my own fault. But yeah, this campaign, it's at least it's not on me. He just built a character based on the normal rules.
Yeah,
I didn't give him any broken magic items. He's an artificer. He's allowed to take X number of magic items normally, like so.
it is nutty that that is just raw. Like that is just how you can do
Yeah.
in D&D, which is why
Yep.
Chulak the Barbarians channel is so popular. I do love a good Chulak video.
Man, do you want to jump in case people haven't guessed from our intro relating to rules and rule design? We're still on it, Martin.
I
The new
know.
one's going to be out soon. Um, we're still on the second of the updated one D&D, one D&D rule supplements for playtest. This week we're going to be looking at the rules glossary because this one's actually quite big. I think more so than the previous one. There's
Yeah, there's
quite a few
37
rules that have been
pages.
updated. Yeah, not just of rules. That's in total.
Yeah, that's that. Okay, that's fair. But the rules start on page 30, so there are 7 pages of rules.
Yeah, which means we should probably jump in.
Let's do it.
So, uh, as expected, they started off alphabetically. First thing we have here is the ability check.
Mm-hmm.
So the ability check is one of 3 types of D20 tests. The rules often call for an ability check, and the DM can also call an ability check to determine which ability to use for a creature's attempt at something. That has a chance of meaningful failure. When the outcome is uncertain and the narrative is interesting, the dice determine the results. The ability check has the following special rules. When making the ability check, the rules or the DM determine the skill proficiency that is relevant for the check. That's pretty standard. We already kind of do that anyway. You add your proficiency bonus for the roll. For example, if a rule refers to a strength check, acrobatics or athletics, you can add your proficiency bonus to the check if you have acrobatics or athletics proficiency. And this is something that is in the base rules, but I don't think as many people are aware of it. If you have like proficiency in athletics, for example. But this is a bit of a stretch now, so bear with me. But you want to think of like I'm very smart in how I've I am physically strong and everything. For whatever reason, I want to use my intelligence with this athletics thing because I know what's the smartest way to position and move my body to get the most leverage or the most effect out of this, you know?
Oh, you're saying you want to like essentially calculate your trajectories.
Yeah, sort
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like, and then maybe you're making a jump, and for the athletics check of your jump, you're like, I'm going to go to here, and I know I can cover this distance, and I need to be like, you're doing all the kind of calculations and stuff. You might be able to make a compelling argument to your DM to say, I'd like to make an intelligence athletics check. In which case you just use your intelligence modifier and the proficiency that you would have had from being proficient in athletics. This is something I didn't do this at all, I don't think, in the first campaign. But something I've done a lot in this campaign because I feel like when you mix and match, it gives you more. You
Yeah.
can kind of get down to the nitty gritty a little bit more, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and it gives players an opportunity to use maybe like stats or skills that they wouldn't normally use. If you get me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like one thing you do an awful lot, I think, or have done a few times this campaign, is you will use strength for your intimidation checks. And the
Yeah.
idea behind that, normally it's charisma, but the idea behind that is you're just like looming over someone with your your huge hulking form and the sheer mass of your body is what is intimidating them.
Yeah, there was also that time where I tried to like a guy tried to like hassle me for a tip, and I like tried to like bend the coin and be like, "Here's your tip," and then I rolled the one. So yeah, but that would if that had worked though.
Yeah, would have been that's in my mind that's a perfectly legitimate way of doing it. Um, Oh, next we have the action required. Making an ability check requires you to take an action unless the rules say otherwise. Several of the named actions, such as hide and influence, include ability checks. The DM may override this requirement and allow a particular ability check to be made as part of a bonus action or as no action at all. Again, this is rules as we kind of run them already. Sometimes if you're like,
Yeah.
I want to, you know, make a strength check to try to kick this door in or something like that, yeah, that's obviously going to take your action. But other times it might just be like, I'm trying to think of something in my head, a history check. I'm trying to remember the name of that thing. That's something that can just happen instantaneously in your head while you're doing something else physically, so it doesn't always require an action.
Yeah.
Uh,
Influence is the new thing there as well to point out. Is influence is now officially an action and has things tied to it that I'm sure we're going to get into.
yeah. Uh, we have difficulty class. Again, this is also a part of the ability check. Difficulty class. The DM determines the difficulty class of an ability check and can override the DC specified in the rules. The typical difficulty class table shows the most common DCs. The default DC for a check is 15 and is rarely worth calling. For an ability check if the DC is as low as 5, unless potential failure is narratively interesting. And again, this is kind of similar to before because previously we had this anyway, where it's very easy is a 5. You need to beat a 5. Easy is a 10. Medium is 15. Hard is 20. Very hard is 25. And 30 is nearly impossible. And I honestly, I won't normally rule you need to make a check of any kind lower than 10. So if something's easy,
Yeah.
I might ask you to. But honestly, it's like I would never ask you to roll something if the DC was a single digit, you know?
Yeah, no, there's just no point at that point. Either
Yeah.
you want them to see, either they should just be able to do it anyway and succeed, or you want them to fail in that way, in somehow. So just like have it happen, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes it might be, you might ask because it might be fun or something like that. I could
Yeah.
see like if a character is really bad at like intelligence or charisma or something, you might, but they still want to try something charismatic. You might be like, yeah, sure. You're just trying to convince this bartender to hand you out a salt packet from behind the bar. Roll a charisma check or something like that, and then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
get like a 4, and you're like, he refuses to give you a salt packet outright and ask you to leave because that could just be funny and kind of silly, and you can just have fun with that. But in any sort of real stakes situation, uh, 10 is the absolute minimum I'll ask for on anything.
Yeah.
And up from that there. More and more I find myself using the 20 and 25 sections.
Yeah.
But only because when players get to higher levels, they can roll so high on the things they're good at. If you're good at strength, by the time you're like the level you guys are at, you have like a double digit bonus to your athletics and stuff like that.
Plus 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you want to do the next one then?
Sure thing. Armor training. So, armor training is the new name for armor proficiency. Any existing rule that involves armor proficiency now applies to armor training. If you wear light, medium, or heavy armor and lack armor training with that type of armor, you've disadvantage on any d20 test you make that involves strength or dexterity, and you can't cast spells. If you equip a shield and lack armor training with shields, you don't gain the armor class bonus of the shield. A question on that one, because I'm having a brain fart moment and I just finished work. There it says you have disadvantage on any d20 test. That includes saving throws. Was that the same before? If you were wearing armor you weren't proficient with?
That's a good question. I know you had disadvantage on some stuff.
Yeah, like I know for like spellcasters and stuff, if you were wearing like metal armor, you couldn't cast through it if you weren't proficient in it. But in terms of like just someone wearing armor they're not proficient with, I don't know. I knew
yeah,
ability
it
check.
was.
Okay.
If you wear armor, you lack proficiency, and you have disadvantage on it on any ability check, saving throw, or attack roll that involves that involves strength or dexterity, and can cast spells. That kind of actually that's the same as it is now. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's the exact same. They just
Yeah,
changed
yeah. So
they've just changed the D20 test. Yeah, sorry, I just had a brain fart and couldn't remember if that was because I've literally never played a character that wasn't proficient in every kind of armor and weapon.
uh, yeah, that's true. At least not for more than a one shot anyway. No. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like this. So
actually.
I think armor training makes a lot more sense.
Mhm.
Something I actually noticed that last week, if we scroll back up a little bit, to the armor, the kind of armored feats and stuff like that,
Yeah.
ones that pertain to armor. I would say medium armor. Uh,
Medium armor
let's see.
master.
Well, so if you take lightly armored,
Yeah.
now, previously that just used to give you proficiency in light armor. Now it gives you light, medium, and shield. So light armor counts for all of those, and then the heavy armor, uh, heavily armored, or yeah, heavily armored is the one that gives you heavy armor training. So previously
Yeah.
you would have had to take, if you had no armor proficiencies and wanted to like get to heavy armor, you had to take 3 feats to get there.
Yeah. Now you take
Now the
two.
first one does most of that for you, and
Yeah.
then the second one can get you the additional one if for example you play a class that doesn't normally have heavy armor.
Yeah, and at least there's some kind of compensation for the investment of a second feat here because you do get the +1 to your Conor strength score.
Yeah, it kind of adds a little bit, it balances out a little
Yeah.
bit because obviously there's so much involved in the first one with light, heavy, and shields
Yeah.
that yeah, but it does work out nicely, I think.
Like I still think you could probably like collapse it all together and just have an armor master feat. Honestly.
I get
But I do
why.
understand why. I can see why heavy is separated apart because you need at least 13 strength to wear heavy armor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I also feel that like the other sets, the medium and light, tend to revolve around at least a little bit of dexterity.
Yeah.
So as a wizard or as a sorcerer, you might take that because you may have a +1 or 2 in dex just as a side ability score, and it might be beneficial for you to be an armored sorcerer. It could be kind of cool. Um, Up next we have the attack action. Equipping weapon. So in the attack action, sorry, when you take the attack action, you can make one attack with a weapon or unarmed strike.
Mhm.
Equipping weapons, you can equip a weapon or unequip a weapon before or after any attack you make as part of this action, even if the attack is with an unarmed strike. So that's before you can
So
equip, unequip before or after. So it kind of works the same as the with the interaction. I think it was called before. We ditching interactions.
yeah, but I think the way I at least understood that would be like say if you're like a sword and board fighter, you can be
Yeah.
and you've 2 attacks because you're like level 5. You can like on your first attack if you wanted to, you could go you could slash someone with your sword, and then on your second attack you could like flip the sword around and just grab it by the pommel and punch someone with the sword, and then that would be your unarmed strike, and you don't have to do like the drawing and sheathing again, because if I remember rightly, raw you can only draw and stow one thing.
Yeah, as part of an action when you take
Yeah.
the attack or something like that.
But
It's
it'd
something like that.
be, but it would be, wouldn't it? It'd be like your interaction, I suppose. So like, it's just folding it into the actual action of the attack. Is you can also draw a weapon as part of it.
Well, that was always the case. The
Yeah.
the interaction was a thing you did as
Yes.
part of another action, which was you attacking. You draw the sword as part of the attack, whatever.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem too different, I don't think.
Yeah.
Neither does the next thing, which is moving between attacks.
Yeah, I was just gonna say most of the stuff we've gone over there mostly just seems about or centered around like cleaning up language and streamlining things and making things a little more obvious.
Yeah, maybe in the interest of like time and just not
Yeah,
putting people to
because like
sleep, we should we
like,
should skip over some of the stuff that isn't like, or some of the stuff that's just the same. We'll say.
yeah, because the next one is moving between attacks and like
Yeah.
there's no change whatsoever.
No, moving between attacks, you can still do it. There you
Yeah.
go.
To be
After
fair
that, we
though,
have
that is the question you always have to explain to new people: is that you can run, attack someone, and run again. Like you can.
yeah, exactly. You have this much movement. You can use it at any point in your turn that you feel, and however, whatever.
Yeah.
As long as you don't go over that amount, it's pretty straightforward. We have arcane spells, which is I think we explained previously. It's basically just like they're dividing spells now into arcane, primal, and divine spells.
Yes.
For arcane, it's bards, sorcerers, warlocks, wizards, and artificers, even though they're not really included in the base book. One thing. Okay, we're on something now I do like actually.
Ooh, go ahead.
So this is pretty cool. So they've redone Bark Skin as a spell entirely, and I love this because there's some art in the player's handbook of like a ranger casting Bark Skin on themselves, and it looks so cool. Their whole arm just turns to like bark, as some of their face does as well. It's a really cool art, and Bark Skin's a terrible spell as it is right now.
I was gonna say it is. I was like, oh, shame, it's a pretty trash spell, but this does seem a lot better actually.
So it's a transmutation spell. It's a bonus action. concentration up to an hour. You touch one willing creature to protect it with regenerating bark until the spell ends. This target's skin assumes a bark-like appearance, and at the start of each of the target's turns, the target regains a number of temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. When you cast a spell using a slot of 3rd level or higher, you can target one additional willing creature for each slot above 2nd level. So that's pretty cool. It's not a huge amount of health or anything, but like it's still considerably more useful than how bark skin worked previously, which I think it was just like, didn't it just give you like a 12 plus dex or something like that
Yeah, I think it give you like the
for your
equivalent of
AC?
like leather armor.
Yeah, exactly. When like most, like I'm pretty sure that rangers and druids who would get bark skin could already wear leather
Yeah,
armor very easily.
druids can
Um,
only wear like natural armors, so yeah, they wear leather
yeah.
no bother.
Oh no, you know what it was? It was you touch a willing creature until it ends. The target's AC cannot be less than 16, regardless of what it is. But that doesn't stack it anyway. It just sets your armor class at
Yeah,
16, which is like not terrible, but like I've never known people to use it, even though conceptually it's a very cool spell. I like
yeah,
this idea better because it means you're always getting that little buffer of if you're like, let's just say you're a druid and you cast that on someone, it's and you're like 5th level, it's going to be like probably like an extra 6 hit points that gets added back at the start of every turn,
yeah.
which means the next attack that hits you is going to basically essentially be negating 6 damage points from that, which I think
Yeah.
is really, really good.
Tank druid, man.
Exactly, yeah. Um, we have blind sight. Okay, how does blind sight work in your mind?
So like the easiest, quickest way I can explain blindsight is it's how Toph sees.
Yeah, no, agreed. It's vibration. It's not quite. It's not well. Okay, it's not tremor sense because that's tremor
Yeah,
sense.
it's a combination between like blind, like it's like Toph slash Daredevil, in at least like conceptually in my head. That's how it works. Like it's like you can see and perceive even in the dark, or even when you cannot see, but it can still be fooled by stealth.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the part I wanted to know. Because I think some people, I would say it's more akin to Daredevil than Toph. Toph is more like tremor sense. But yeah, Daredevil, because he gets this kind of 3D rendering of the
Yeah,
environment around him based on sound waves and stuff like that. Blind sight, in my mind, is a little bit like that. You would just have a sense for where things are and objects and people nearby you. Uh, but yeah, it's important, in my mind, that it can be fooled by stealth.
yeah.
You know,
It's not.
that
It's not true sight.
it's not true sight, and it's also not like an automatic I detect everything thing either. Like tremor sense, in my mind, tremor sense is the same. You can sneak past tremor sense. Tremor sense requires you to make significant vibrations on the ground so that creature can detect you. So it can be fooled, and I
Mm.
think that's important. And I think fooling something via blind sight is should work similarly as well if you move slowly enough or don't impact too hard on something on the ground or whatever you're doing. But the way this is kind of phrased makes me think that like if you're not behind total cover, you can be seen. So it says, you have blind sight you can effectively see within a specific range without relying on physical sight. Within that range, you can effectively see anything that isn't behind total cover, even if you are blinded or in darkness. Moreover, you can effectively see a hidden or invisible creature in that range. So that means that
Yeah.
even if you're sneaking and like let's say you roll a stealth check and like you get a nat 20 or you're a rogue and you get like 20 something, you're hidden, but according to this, that person can effectively see you regardless of if you're hidden or not.
You know what I don't like about this is
Hmm.
they say within a specific range and they don't give you the range.
Well, that would be
Like I know
that
it'd
would be
be
specific to
like
each creature.
okay, fair, fair, but like do you know
That'd be like when it goes dark vision 60 feet,
60
dark
or
vision 120.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I get you, I get you.
But I just don't like that the way it's written here would make it seem like it is an automatic. And I don't know, maybe it's not terrible, but
Yeah, it's yeah. I think it's just both we both had a different understanding at least in our heads and ran it differently, and this is kind of like
hmm,
contradicting our own established idea of what that is, which is probably why it's a little difficult.
The more I think about it, the more I think about how fucking broken rogues are.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me doesn't mind if there is something that they just can't beat or sneak past. Because you know yourself, when a rogue decides I'm gonna stealth, they roll for stealth, and they're like I don't think when Gavin was
Yeah.
playing a rogue blood hunter, I don't think he told me a number for months before Aerith died because he just didn't need to. He'd roll and he'd go, yeah,
Yeah.
because he has like 25 plus, or in some cases more than 30, and he
He rolled a
knows he's like,
40 once. I'm positive he rolled a 40 once.
you might have had like, did you pass without a trace maybe, or?
Sorry, I'm thinking of my game where they do have
Oh,
pass without
okay.
a trace and a rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, like, I don't like. I instinctually, by instinctive actions, I don't like that. Like, you can be seen if you're invisible, but like, in terms of like how the concepts rub up against each other, it makes sense logically in my brain, I guess.
Yeah.
What there was the thing I was going to say about it. Oh yeah, so it's as long as you're not behind total cover. So like, I guess you can fool it if you are like quickly dashing between cover, like if you're like dashing from a rock to another rock, kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
but it would be tricky. I would I don't know, like I would. I guess I'd probably like some
What I'm kind of getting
clarification
at
around
is,
like how did it, like if you have blind sight and someone is hiding behind total cover, and then they try and stealth from one area of total cover to another area of total cover, they're just screwed in the middle, I guess.
as soon as they step out from
Yeah,
behind
they're
it,
done.
do you see them? Part of me thinks that maybe it's not the worst to have something that is a foil to, people who have crazy good stealth and
Yeah,
pass without a trace and all this stuff. Um,
I suppose as well. It's not super common.
there's a few monsters. There's a good few monsters have it. Also, I'm pretty sure. No, sorry, no. I was gonna say I'm pretty sure dwarves have it now, but they don't. Dwarves have tremor sense.
Yeah,
Going forward, which again can be fooled because
yeah,
if you do not make enough vibration on the ground, then you're not detected. But um,
or just don't touch the ground.
just don't touch the ground. There you go. That's actually true. If you're not, that's specifically in the rules. If you're not in contact with the ground, you do not. You cannot trigger tremor sense.
You heard the man. Flying kicks, folks.
Yeah. Leap, just leap up and kick him. Um, climb speed. I don't think climb speed is change. Moving the vertical surface, expending extra movement. Speed is usable.
Yep.
You can't climb upside down or on a horizontal surface or whatever on the underside of it, but you can't. You have a spider climb trait. That's all pretty standard. Creature types are pretty standard.
Yeah.
D20 chest test.
We've already covered this, I think, in the previous UA
Well,
for this.
yes, but the D20 test is slightly different. So previously it was if you rolled a 20 on a D20 test, you got a heroic inspiration. Now they're doing it that if you roll a 1, you get it. So they're kind of testing
Yeah.
it both ways to see what they're going to end up going with. I've heard both sides of this argument. I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, if you do something successful with a D20, yeah, you just did something awesome. That inspires you to go and do something more awesome and keep going." And I get that, but also someone else said like, "Oh yeah, and if you get a nat 1, you should get a D20 because if you fail, you're going to be like, oh crap, I got to try harder." And this
Yeah.
is you given the opportunity to try harder.
That's the
Personally,
logic
I like
presented
the
here.
sorry.
That's sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you there. Please go ahead.
No, I was going to say personally, I like the idea of getting it on a 20 more than on a 1.
Yeah.
I think both ways are fine. I lean slightly more towards the 20 in my mind.
Yeah, the logic they're presenting here for that is what you were saying, where like it's a thing of like you are a hero and like you fail on your check and you're like, no, that's not good enough. I have to try harder. I have to do this, and it's like it's to signify like your resolve to
I will
succeed.
be Hokage.
Oh man, you can't do this to me. I'm watching Bleach again, and it's just like time traveling every time I open Disney Plus, just back 10 years. Like it's ridiculous. But yeah, I honestly I don't really have strong feelings either way on it. I can understand the logic for both. And I think both fall into their whole thing of we want to like celebrate successes and like make more dramatic moments and that kind of stuff. So like
Yeah.
I think the argument for either is equally as good as the other, if you get me. Like I can see absolutely agree, but yeah, like if you crit, like holy crap, you just did something amazing. Like here is an inspiration essentially. Versus like one, you just rolled a 1. Okay, you're down, but you're not out. You can keep going, and like that signifies
Yeah.
your resolve. But I suppose if it's on ones, it's probably easier to balance because there are so many mechanics to give you advantage for the 20 that you could like just farm inspiration. I'm thinking like a barbarian.
That's actually quite true.
And like that would be
Also,
pretty powerful to
like,
have. Like if you're a barb and you like if you're like I'll put it this way, like if I'm playing log with this mechanic, right, and it's every time you get a 20 you gain an inspiration. Um I could like go into an action surge round or even stand a normal round of attacks and say like I reckless on my first attack, I crit on that attack. A I then get a D20. I can use that next time for D20, or even if I don't reckless, even if I just flank, I get a crit from flanking, and now I can move off and attack someone else or do something else entirely and like leave that guy, and I still have the advantage then from the critting. So you could kind of farm inspiration, but I suppose it is kind of also restrained a bit by only having one inspiration at a time.
yeah, yeah. I get what you mean, though. I mean, I actually kind of like the idea where if you're doing well, you're kind of you build momentum essentially,
The turning
and
of the
like for
tide
something
kind
like
of thing.
yeah, exactly. And I do get where you're coming from, where like there's way more mechanics in the game that give you advantage on things, so you can get potentially get multiple 20s. There's nothing in the game, I don't think, anywhere that would let you try to get a one.
Yeah.
Um,
Tragedy
I
Bard?
did I sorry.
Tragedy Bard?
Oh, maybe actually I'd have to check the mechanics of it again.
Yeah, it's
I
been
haven't
a while
haven't
since
read
I
it in a
read
while.
Tragedy Bard. That's a really cool
Uh,
class.
I did think, because the way it's written here, whenever a player character rolls a one for a D20 test, they gain the inspiration. That would be really cool for halflings because halflings reroll ones,
Oh man.
which means you get the D20.
I don't think
But
that would work with halflings.
if I'm looking at it here, Mrs. Whenever a player character rolls a one for a D20, because like here's the
But when
thing,
they roll a one, they re-roll it.
that's the thing, you re-roll, you do another roll, so you have rolled, because it's the rolling the one initially
That
is
triggers the
what
halfling,
triggers the re-roll,
though. Oh, okay.
and it would also trigger you getting it, so you'll be able to get that inspiration without having to have the negative consequence of actually failing that check, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. Halflings OP, man.
Halflings are great, man.
That's why Tolkien sued, right? Because they were so OP.
That's exactly why. Yeah, he's like, I created the greatest fantasy race ever, I'm going to take your money now. Uh, dash action, I think, moves. Yeah, you just take
Exact
another move
same.
action on your turn. Yeah, functions the same. Difficult terrain functions the exact same as well.
Is that a poem? Oh, sorry. I was like, it's the way it's formatted on the last page.
It is
It's
formatted very weirdly. Yeah,
I was like scrolling quickly. I was like, did they give us a poem about like it's like the weirdest haiku? Creature that isn't tiny, furniture that is small or larger, heavy snow, heavy undergrowth.
it's funny that we were just talking about Tolkien as well, because introducing that as a small poem is the most Tolkien thing in the world.
Only if it was then followed up by several songs.
Oh man.
Oh god.
The definition of divine spells, similar to arcane ones earlier, divines are obviously granted to you by the power of gods, and this clerics and paladins fall in there.
They did some good clarification on exhaustion.
I am really liking this exhaustion mechanic.
Yeah.
So this is completely different to what we had before, right? Before we had 6 levels of exhaustion. It was disadvantage on ability checks, half movement.
Was the first one like disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls, and then at level 2 you would have movement, and then at level 3 it was like 0 movement.
It was.
And then at 6 you're dead.
So no, it was. Do you know what? I was watching Bob Worldbuilder's video.
So yeah, I literally had watched this video as well. That's a great video.
He put it up on screen. He put up the chart, but he had them all blanked out. And I paused the video there, and I was like, "Can I get these right?" And I got all but one, and I mixed 2 up, but I knew all of them. And it's funny because that's a rule I don't use a whole lot. And I'm pretty sure it was disadvantage on ability checks. Your movement is halved. 3 is disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws. I want to say 5 is it like 4 is like your movement becomes 0, and oh no, I've lost it now. Damn it.
Movement becomes 0 is one of them, yeah.
And like you said, with level 6 ending up that you just die.
Yeah.
and you are
Does,
dead now.
do you remember?
Um,
Do you remember when Grog got Craven Edge in campaign 1 of Critical Role, and he discovered that if he didn't rest, he could just stack strength on. Because every time he cuts them on Craven Edge, they had to make a con save, and if they failed, Craven Edge stole 2 points of their strength and gave it to Grog, and he just like stayed awake for I think like an entire day and never rested, so never regained his hit points. But like the sword grew like crazy strong and powerful, and he had like 24 strength or something absolutely absurd like that.
yeah. Was that because of like Matt didn't design it in such a way? He designed it like when you rest.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, I just won't
Because
rest. It's
if he,
fine.
yeah, if he rested, he would lose all of that. But he
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
rest, and then he lost his soul.
That's right, actually. Yeah. Oh, because yeah, he didn't rest, and he had like disadvantage on the wisdom save against
Mm-hmm.
Craven Edge then and stuff. Yeah. Oh man.
Yep.
Let's go back to that. That was a great moment.
Stab point.
Um, so instead of exhaustion being 6 levels, with each level being something different, it's now 10 levels, but
Mm.
they're all more or less the same thing. But I kind of like it. I tend not to use exhaustion. I
Yeah.
maybe give someone a level here or there. I rarely go to 2 levels. I never go to 3 or higher, because exhaustion is heavy. It scales up super fast. It's really debilitating as a player. Whereas now, what it is while you're subject to exhaustion, the exhaustion condition, you experience the following effects. Levels of exhaustion. The condition is cumulative. Each time you receive it, you gain 1 level of exhaustion. You die if your exhaustion exceeds 10. So you can go to
Yeah.
10. On 11, you're dead. Um, D20 rolls are affected. When you make a D20 test, subtract your exhaustion level from the D20 roll. I like that. It's just and this kind of makes it so that you absolutely could have 2 or maybe even 3 levels of exhaustion and not be terribly affected. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you could that it makes the if you've ever been in a campaign situation where you're like, oh, we're chasing this guy, oh, they're so much faster than us, we need to rest, but if we rest, they're going to get way too far ahead. Maybe we could just push through the night. But the thing is, pushing through the night is so debilitating when you get disadvantage
Mm-hmm.
on loads of stuff so fast and your speed gets halved and stuff. It's like you would just never make that call. With this, I could see people being like, look, it's 2 days of travel. If we just push through those 2 days, we'll have -2 on things, but that's okay because we're like level 15 and we're rolling like 12 to hit or something.
Yeah.
Rolling 10 to hit is still really good, whatever it is. um yeah, so I actually quite like this a lot. It works the same for for your spell save DC as well, which is quite fun. So if you're a caster and you have a 17 save,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes easier for others to avoid your spells and stuff because your DC becomes lower. And then whenever you finish a long rest, you remove 1 of your levels of exhaustion. Whenever exhaustion reaches 0, you are no longer exhausted. So similar to, I think it functioned like that before as well. Each
Yeah.
one long rest reduced 1 of the levels until you were back to normal. I really, really like this. I could see myself using exhaustion as a mechanic far more if this rule was implemented,
Yeah.
as opposed to what it is now, where I just don't touch it because, again, I feel like it slams the brakes on everything
Yeah.
so abruptly.
The one place I've seen it used, not I won't say commonly, but like as a default, that I did actually quite enjoy was the way Matt Mercer handles the resurrection stuff, where after you've been brought back from the dead, unless it's in the middle of like a combat and you just got revivified and you're just boom up like that again. If you had to have gone through the ritual and they brought you back through his like extended revivification ritual whole thing, like that whole shebang,
Yeah.
they have like a -4 penalty to like everything basically. And
Mm.
I think that's from exhaustion. You take on like a couple of levels of exhaustion, gives you a -4. I think with something like that, I actually thought that I think that'd be like I would like to see that actually as standard, where like if you are brought back through like an extended thing and you've been out for like more than like a couple of seconds, it's gonna be you're gonna be bollocks like for a
Yeah,
lack of a
absolutely.
better
Yeah.
word.
I mean, that's why all the low level resurrection spells don't bring you back at full hit points and don't
Mm-hmm.
cure poisons and stuff. They're like, look, they're just gonna get you breathing again, and that's it. You need like the higher level resurrection stuff to get like your hit points back and restore body parts and all this kind of stuff. Dying, unsurprisingly, takes it out of you.
Sometimes quite literally.
Yeah, with it being your soul.
Yeah.
Uh, I believe expertise functions the same as before. You just double your proficiency, which nothing has changed there. Uh, fly speed. I think there's maybe something slightly different here. So fly speed, you move through the air with fly speed. You can stay aloft until you land, fall, or die. While flying, if you are incapacitated or restrained, oh, sorry, while flying, you fall if you are incapacitated or restrained. If you have the hover trait, you can stay aloft even while incapacitated or restrained. That makes sense to me. If you're
What?
flying and flapping,
What?
well,
Can any PCs hover? Any PC
mm,
races?
no, I believe all the flying
Yeah.
races have
They just have like just a general
they
fly
just say
speed.
flying. They don't say
Yeah, yeah.
it's usually a bracket hover
Yeah.
after the movement speed or something like that. Um, yeah, actually, that's actually a question I'm curious about now. Does the actual spell fly let you hover? Because
I would hope so. Because you're not like flying, like with the fly spell, you're not flying through like physical means. It's your arcane magic that is allowing you to
yeah,
fly.
you're Supermaning it basically. Like
Yeah, exactly.
it doesn't actually say you can hover, but I would probably rule that
I
you
would,
could
yeah.
because again, the fly spell doesn't say you sprout wings and they keep you aloft. It says you fly, you gain a speed. To me, that is you are hovering like Superman around the room.
Yeah, I've always
In
treated
which
it almost
case,
like moving your body telekinetically.
yeah, sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Gaming tool set, we can skip over that. It's more or less the same.
Grapple sense.
Uh, grapple. Do you want to do grapple?
Yeah, I'll do grapple. I'm quite a fan of using grapples in D&D. While you're grappled, you experience the following effects: speed 0, your speed is 0 and cannot change. Attacks affected, you have disadvantage on attack rolls against any creature other than the grappler. Movable, the grappler can drag or carry you, but the grappler suffers the slowed condition while moving, unless you are tiny or 2 or more sizes smaller than the grappler. Escape, while grappled, you can make a dex or strength save against the grappler's escape DC at the end of each of your turns, ending the condition on yourself on success. The condition also ends if the grappler is incapacitated or something moves you outside of the grappler's range without using your speed. So, for example, the thing I used to do all the time in Campaign 1 when I got grappled was Misty Step out of it.
Yeah.
The big change in that one is to do is the movable one, because there is the new slowed condition, which I will
Yes.
flick. Do you have that there by any chance?
I don't have it open in front of me now.
I got it. I got it. I get it.
Yeah.
So the slowed condition, while you are slowed, experience the following effects: limited movement. You have to spend 1 extra foot of movement for every foot you move using your speed. Attacks affected, attack rolls against you have advantage. And dexterity saves affected, you have disadvantage on dex saves. So yeah, you're taking some penalties as well for grappling someone. Normally, if you grapple someone, it was just like basically both of your speeds became 0, and you probably weren't attacking because you were trying to hold this person down.
Yeah, but you could still attack though.
You
Whereas
yeah, you
now
could.
you've disadvantage on attack rolls on any target other than the grappler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the grappler, everyone has advantage on because obviously they're using both their arms to hold the person down.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's essentially like I don't know, grapples. It was always a bit of a strange one because I think a lot of people picture grapples as like
restrained.
yeah, like you have someone held and you have their arms locked, but it's not. It's more like two people have grabbed a hold of each other and they're kind of like tussling a bit.
Yeah,
You know,
I was going to say it's more like if you've ever seen two drunk lads have a fight.
basically, yeah. Where they're locked into each other.
They're just holding each other and swinging each other around. That's basically
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a new version of the guidance spell, and I think it's kind of great.
It's really good. I'm really happy they made the change because it's kind of how everyone was using it anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. It has a lot of the same range and stuff. The big thing about it is it's now a reaction. You take this in a response to when an ally within 30 feet of you fails an ability check. You channel the magic inside the creature who failed the ability check. The creature can roll a d4 and add the number rolled to the check, potentially turning it into a success. Once a creature rolls a die for this spell, that creature can't benefit from this spell again until the creature finishes a long rest. So, guidance as it is at the moment is basically a case of anytime anyone does anything, here's a d4.
Yeah.
Just d4s for everybody all day long. You can do it. Someone can make a check on a door, have a d4.
Yeah.
Someone wants to try and make whatever it is, have a d4. Have a d4, all of there. Making a stealth check, have a d4. And it kind of just gets... It's this thing about clerics, because clerics typically have it. It just gets spammed the whole time.
You get to, I'm going to make... and you get guidance.
Yeah, exactly. And like... it just becomes a bit of a weird. Mechanically, it's weird because it's like, do I just assume that from now until the end of the campaign, anytime anyone does anything, they have a D4 just
Yeah.
because I took this one cantrip? It's a bit strange. It makes more of a sense as a reaction because, like you said, people were more or less using it that way anyway.
Yeah.
When someone decides they want to make a check, you react and you go, "I'll cast guidance,"
Yeah.
you know. But now it's like you do it specifically when they fail, and one second now. Once a creature rolls a dice on that creature. Ah, yes. Okay. So actually, I was gonna see if it did the thing where it was like, once you benefit from this spell and succeed a check,
Mm.
you cannot get or benefit from it again until a long rest. In this case, even if you roll the d4 and still don't meet the DC for what you're trying to do, you can't use it again.
Yeah.
I would even, if I was going to do anything to change that, I would just add a line where it's like, once you succeed on an ability check, while using the D4 dice from guidance, you can't use it again. Because that way, if you try to roll the D4 and you roll a 1 or you get to 4 and it's still not enough for you to pass, then at least you can benefit from it again in the day,
It could be a very powerful couple spells to take if you take this and Silvery Barbs.
Oh yeah, Silver Barbs is the one that knocks a D4.
No, it's you choose if someone makes a roll and you can choose to give them disadvantage and another person after that advantage.
Oh yes,
It's
yes,
that one.
sorry.
Oh sorry,
I was thinking of Bane. Sorry.
I'm being really dumb. It's Bane is the one where it's a D4 from it. The Silvery Barbs is the one where like when someone succeeds on when someone like rolls a dice and succeeds, you can change that to failure and kind of vice versa. It's the thing Sam kept using in the Calamity one shot.
Yeah, he was spamming that actually like crazy.
It's such a good spell. It's such a good spell.
I love this change though. Just I figure it makes more sense. Guidance is it's more rounded. Again, I would like to see that one change implemented just so that you're not like casting it and then only getting a 1 and still not passing and wasting it for that person for the day. It'd be nice if you just change, because even then the mechanic works that, hey, look, everyone can benefit from this one time in the day, and if you fail, it doesn't count against you benefiting from it. So
Yeah.
I feel like that would be pretty good. The help action. I think this works the same. You choose one of your skill proficiencies and one ally who can hear or see you. You get advantage to the next ability check that ally makes with the chosen skill. Oh yes, actually this is interesting because this is kind of how I run help. Anyway, I don't know if this is the same way it is before. I normally only roll that you can choose to give someone the help action, which is giving someone advantage on the check if you yourself are proficient. I'm going to double check if that is the case in the main rules. When you keep reading through that for me?
Sure thing. This benefit expires if the ally doesn't use it before the start of your next turn. To give this assistance, you must be near enough to the ally to assist verbally or physically when the ally makes the check. The DM has final say on whether your assistance is possible. And then you can also assist attack roll, which is you momentarily distract an enemy within 5 feet of you, granting advantage to the next attack roll by one of your allies against that enemy. This benefit expires at the end of your turn. I love that they say see or hear, because that means like if someone's rolling an insight check and you're down the hall, you could be like, Conor, he looks dodgy.
Let me see here now. Yes, so the way it was previously is when you take the help action, a creature creature you aid gains advantage on the next ability check it makes to perform the task that you are helping with, provided that it makes a check. That makes a check before the start of your next turn, so it has to be like in the same round, which makes sense. Alternatively, you can aid a friendly creature by attacking. Blah blah blah. Works the same. Doesn't say anything about proficiency, but I this is how I actually rule it anyway in our home game. Is that you need to have, because it makes sense that like you can't have like someone make I don't know, a survival check to track something
if
and
they're
then
not proficient in survival.
yeah, exactly. Or like the I don't know, the sorcerer could come in whose jump stat is wisdom and is not proficient in survival, and they could go, I give them advantage. It's like, what are you going to contribute to the situation? You're going to make things worse if anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think I again we run this anyway, so I'm quite happy that
I
works that
actually
way.
am so used to running it that way, like in both, because I run it the same way in my campaign as well. Running it that way in mine and in yours, that I didn't pick that up on the first time I read it. I was just like, oh, it's the same. Okay.
No, yeah. It won't distract an enemy within 5 feet, granting advantage next attack roll. One allies Expires. Yeah, and the assist on the attack roll functions pretty much the
Yeah,
same way
it's
then.
yeah, that one's the exact, pretty much the exact same. And we went through heroic inspiration just as earlier when we were talking
Yeah, it
about
functions
something
the
else.
same. Again, you
Yeah,
get it on a 1 for this version of the UA, unlike the last one, which
yeah.
is you get on the 20. But the hidden condition. Okay, so this is actually the hidden wasn't a condition before. They're actually leaning quite heavy on conditions
Mm-hmm.
going forward, which is interesting mechanically. Um,
Yeah.
that it'll be there'll be a lot more conditions to keep track of. We'll all have to get new little tokens that we hook over our minis to show what they're doing, because all the ones I have are the existing
Yeah.
conditions and spell effects, and not all this new stuff.
I'm kind of okay with it because, like, at least any of the new conditions I have seen so far have just given more clarity on stuff that always comes up
Yeah,
as a question anyway.
agreed, agreed. So with the hidden condition, first off, it's concealed. You aren't affected by any effect that requires the target to be seen, which makes perfect sense. Actually, this is kind of interesting. Just I'm thinking like, okay, if you roll for stealth, right?
Mm.
And you roll so high or whatever, but what if you roll lower or higher than one creature's passive and lower than another's? You're only like, how can you be under the hidden condition relevant to one creature but not hidden relevant to another? This is something I always thought was kind of. Does that make sense?
Uh, I get I get where you're coming from, but it makes sense to me that you can be that way because, like, think of like any game where you've had to do a stealth section and like one guard turns around, you take him out really quickly, and the other guard who's walking that way doesn't see you. Like it's basically that, like, in terms of like, I like, say there's me and you, say like me, you and Mike are in a room, and like I'm hiding behind the door and you're standing in the doorway. Mike is sitting on a couch in the room.
Okay.
I am hidden to you but not to Mike.
Okay. Yeah. But that's what I mean, though. But I mean, like, I don't think
So
there's
like
any other
I
conditions that like.
yeah, go on. So sorry, go on.
Yeah. So normally, when it comes to conditions, you either are or are not that thing. Just
Yeah.
it's binary. You're one or the other. So, but with this thing, you can be hidden to one person but not to another, which means you both kind of are. It's only relevant to one person. You are hidden or relevant to these group. You're not.
Are you about to bring in like a Schrodinger stealth check here? Like,
No, no, no. I'm just saying it's a bit of a strange one. I guess it kind of has to work this way mechanically because there is situations where you might roll
yeah,
high enough to sneak past this person, but not this person.
yeah. I like
Um,
the way I always think about stuff like this is like guards on a wall, maybe. Like, so, like, say you're coming around like the western side of a castle, and like the guards on the western side of the castle spot you, and they haven't like let off the alarm yet. So the guards on the
mhm.
eastern side of the castle don't know you're there. You're still hidden to the guards on the eastern side of the castle. It's a kind of a bad example because they're so much further away, but
Yeah,
it's
I,
through
I I guess
lines.
you would just have to consider what the effect is. Like for example, with the concealed thing,
Yeah.
you're unaffected by any effect that requires you to be seen.
So any
Um,
spell with a visual component doesn't work on you
Basically, yeah.
unless it says
So
a point you can see rather than a creature you can see.
So if you're in a room with guard A and guard B and you roll high enough that guard A doesn't see you but guard B does,
Mm-hmm.
and then guard B goes quickly cast a spell on him or cast whatever slow or whatever you want to do, a hold person or something like that,
Yeah.
but the DM kind of has to filter it through. Okay, guard B can say that because he can point right at you and see
Mm-hmm.
you, but from where guard B is, he does not see you, or guard A, sorry, so he cannot cast that spell because it's a visual component. So you need to just, unlike other conditions, I'm making this way too pedantic and I have way more complicated than this.
Yeah.
All I'm
It's
saying is,
yeah.
this is like the only condition that you would have to filter through individual creatures
Yeah. It's vision cones
to
and
determine
metadata.
whether yeah. That's no different than before. I don't know I even brought it up. I'm sorry. Um, surprise effect. If you are hidden when you roll initiative, you have advantage on the roll. That's pretty cool, actually. Um, attacks
That's
affected.
oh, initiative. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Never
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
Attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and your attack rolls have advantage.
Same as
And
before.
ending the condition. The condition ends on you immediately after any of the following occurrences. When you make a sound louder than a whisper, an enemy finds you. You make an attack roll. you cast a spell with a verbal component, or you aren't heavily obscured or behind any cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Um,
No, I'm happy with
that
all
that
that.
all makes sense. Yeah. That actually kind of clarifies as well, because I'm pretty sure. No, maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong on that. I'll forget. I won't say it because I'm pretty sure I'm wrong on it. Again, like you said a minute ago, I like this. It is more clarifying on what it means to be hidden, because like previously we would roll a stealth check and you're like, yeah, you're hidden, but what does hidden mean? We don't have a rule for hidden,
Yeah.
but now we have a proper condition that associates with it.
Yeah.
The hide action. When you hide, you try to conceal yourself. To do so, you must make a. Okay, oh, I remember reading this before. This is weird. To do so, you must make a DC 15 Dexterity Stealth check while you're heavily obscured or behind 3/4 cover or total cover, and you must be out of any visible line of sight, any enemy's line of sight. If you can see a creature, you can discern whether it can. You can discern whether it can see you. On a successful check, you are hidden. Make note of your check's total, which becomes the DC for a creature to find you with a Wisdom Perception check. So the last part makes sense, that when you're hidden,
Yeah.
your stealth check becomes what they need to try to beat in order to see you. The part that doesn't make sense here is the set DC.
I think that's just to set a minimum for, yeah, you're hiding, you're hidden, like, you know what I mean? Because like if you're trying to hide, there's obviously going to be like an element of there is a chance you can be found, so there needs to be a certain amount of difficulty to it, if you get me. And even so, once you succeed, so like if you roll a 15, right, like as long as you roll 15, you are hidden. But if someone is now looking for you while you're hidden, that DC for them, if you only roll a 15, is a 15. If you roll like a 32, like my rogue is one to anytime I ask him to roll stealth, like he's still, like regardless what happens, he's hidden. But if someone wants to look for him, they have to roll a 32.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I kind of get it.
So
It's a bit
NPCs
strange, but I kind
never
of get it.
finding PC rogues again, ever.
I guess. I guess like in my mind, when currently as the game is now, when someone wants to roll for stealth, they just do it. Like I wanna hide. Yeah, sure, make a stealth check. And even if you only get a 12, as far as I'm concerned, you're still hiding. It's just like you're hiding less effectively. Whereas this puts a hard stopper on the minimum requirement it takes for you to actually hide. You need to at least beat a 15, because if you don't beat a 15, you're like hiding behind the curtains and your feet are sticking out or something stupid like there's a minimum requirement of like you need to be at least this good at hiding or you're not hiding. And I kind of get that. It's weird to put a hard number on it, particularly like if because like if you look at some guard stat blocks and stuff like that, in they only have like a passive of like maybe 11 or 12, some of them. So like what if I roll a 14? I should technically be able to hide from them because their passive is not high enough to detect me, but I wouldn't be hidden because I only got I got less than 15, you know?
I think maybe what's going on is they're trying to like remove work for the DM, because you know if someone goes, I want to roll a stealth check, and they're all like, say they roll like an 18, and then you're trying to sneak in somewhere, and if you're, say there's like 3 or 4 guards in there they're trying to sneak through, you roll perception for all those guards, like to see like if they're sneaking past a couple of guards, you're going to roll a perception to see if they see if they do that. So like if they roll a 14, they can still try to sneak past the guards, but you have to roll all of those perception checks. Where now if they roll like 14, do you know what, there's actually a decent shot that a lot of guards might find that, because like it's not that hard to roll a 14 on a die.
No.
But with this, like if they roll a 14, they just go, oh, sorry, you think you're being stealthy and you're trying your best, but unfortunately the guard spot you. So like I'm actually kind of okay with specifically for stealth, that there is like that minimum, because like it is by nature a difficult thing to do to stealth. I know an argument can be made for nearly every skill check for that, but like I think particularly just because stealth specifically involves like that interaction with another creature stat block to like try and counter your check essentially.
Yeah, it's an interesting mechanic to want to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're changing how passives work, but it's an interesting mechanic to add a threshold in order for you to enter this condition to add to put yourself in this condition, you know.
But you do
Um,
also have to be heavily obscured or behind cover. Like you can't just be like,
well,
"Mm,
that was kind of the case anyway. I think
yeah,
you had to be behind cover. You had to be, unless you're a wood elf, in which case you can do it
true,
under lightly obscured, which was always kind of cool. You
yeah,"
can just vanish into the mist.
or
It's an
yeah.
interesting one. I'm curious to see where things go. I think I remember Mark Humes made a tweet about this, and I didn't fully read it at the time, and I kind of wish I might go back and do it.
I think the one I saw Mark Humes tweeting about was the influence action.
Oh no, sorry, you're right. I take it back. That was exactly what it was. Um,
Yeah, he
yeah,
was. Yeah, he is.
speaking of, that's coming up in a second. Up next, we have the incapacitated condition.
Mhm.
You can't take any actions or reactions. That's normal. Your concentration is broken. Yeah. Speechless, you can't speak. And surprise, if you are incapacitated when you roll initiative, you have disadvantage. That's interesting. So between hidden and incapacitated, they're kind of opposing in that way. You
Yeah,
have advantage and disadvantage on initiative. That makes perfect sense to me.
yeah.
I wonder then, are they getting rid of, is surprise in this by any chance?
Like based on like I may just be like reading into how they've like given the subheading to it in the hidden condition, but surprise is there. Like if you're hidden, when you roll initiative, you have advantage on the roll. That's a surprise attack.
No, beside what I mean is like I don't see the actual surprised condition
Oh yeah, no,
because that was the big thing about fifth edition is that surprised was a condition now instead of a surprise round.
yeah, no, that's what I mean. I think it may be getting rolled into hidden as a condition.
Where
Where
if
like
you're
there is no surprise. Like if you are hidden from a creature and you initiate combat because you're initiating combat from a hidden area, you have advantage on initiative rolls. You have advantage on your attack rolls.
yeah, but like what I mean is like previously you had the surprised condition where you missed your first round of
Yeah,
combat. I wonder are they ditching that now and instead they're like, hey, you're going to be lower in the initiative, you disadvantage because
yeah,
you're incapacitated, and likewise because you were hidden, you got the drop on someone, you're higher, presumably
yeah,
higher in the initiative
yeah.
order. I
That's
wonder are they ditching surprise then? Because again, I don't see it here, and instead just rolling into how these two behave and how you might get the drop on someone and end up at different parts of the initiative order as a result.
yeah. That's what I was saying essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's and I don't dislike that to be honest. When you are being surprised
yeah,
is like it's honestly kind of a death sentence either way.
yeah.
Because
Like
like if the players get a drop on an enemy group, that combat's over in two
done.
turns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely done. I'm happy as long as there are clear guidelines for it. If this is the like
Yeah.
if this is the only thing for surprise, then that's the only question we ever have to ask about like if the party get the jump on monsters or someone gets to jump on the party. If that's the only thing we have to check is like, oh yeah, the surprise creature was hidden, so sorry, the creature was hidden, so you're surprised, so now they have advantage on attack rolls and initiative checks. I actually quite like that. I think it's nice and simple and smooth and streamlined, and doesn't seem like wildly overpowered. Like if you're an assassin rogue, you can still get your assassinated off if that's the case as well, because you'll be going before the creature they haven't acted. It'll be
Yeah, pairs nicely with that as well. Yeah, absolutely.
because like anytime surprise as a condition comes up, it's always people going like, but how does it work with assassinate though?
Yes. Do you
Yeah,
want to do the influence action?
yeah, I can run through it, no problem. It's a chunky little section here.
Yeah, like way more than any of the stuff here now.
So
No surprise I saddled you with.
so the influence action has three parts essentially. There is the ability check, the attitude, and the interaction. So with the influence action, you can try to influence another creature to do something you request or demand. This action can be used only on creatures controlled by the DM, so you can't use it on player characters, which I'm really happy they put that clarification in there. And it
Yeah.
isn't mind control. Another clarification I'm very happy they put in there. It can't force a creature to do something that is counter to the creature's alignment or that is otherwise repugnant, great word, to the creature. This action has three main parts: attitude, interaction, and a charisma check. So attitude, self-explanatory, is how the creature you're trying to influence feels about you, and it's broken down generally into three states. There is indifferent, friendly, and hostile. If they're indifferent, if you want them to do something for you that is beneficial to you and of no real issue to them, it's going to be a pretty low DC check. I think it's like a 10. It's a DC 10. If there's a minor risk to an indifferent creature for something you're asking them to do, then it's DC 20 is the final charisma check you're going to have to make. And these DCs then fluctuate depending on the creature's disposition towards you. So with a friendly creature, they'll accept them as something that'll cause them a minor risk at DC 10 and a major risk at minor risk at DC 10 and a significant risk or sacrifice at DC 20. And then for hostile creatures, those DCs then get bumped up because obviously they are less willing to help you out. So for a hostile creature, the DC is 10 for them to offer no help but doesn't do anything to you.
Yeah, it doesn't work against you.
It specifically says what does them no harm. So like they're not going to punch you in the mouth for asking you a question. And in DC 20, the creature does that as long as no risks or sacrifices are involved. So regardless what you're asking of them, if a creature is hostile towards you, even if it's something that could be massively beneficial, if there's any kind of a risk to them at all, they're gonna just tell you to go ahead. Just like I'm trying so hard not to swear here. I nearly swore like 4 times. They're just gonna tell you to go away. Like regardless what you want them to do, regardless of the benefit to them, if there's even the tiniest bit of risk, they're just gonna be like, not it, chief.
Yeah, it makes sense. Really, it's like it's okay. I feel like we talked about this very briefly before. Maybe I just talked about it with you casually.
Yeah.
It's a weird one, right? Because 10 and 20 are pretty far apart in terms of checks. So there's not a lot of room for like flexibility in terms like sometimes I like determining if a DC should be something other than a 10 or a 20.
Yeah. Sorry, I've kind of actually left out a slightly crucially important part about the interaction part there. These states can be shifted based on what you're asking a creature. So with the interaction, so when you take the influence action, either roleplay how your character interacts with the creature or describe your character's behaviour, focusing on your character's request or demand. If the interaction is especially suited to the creature's desires and outlook, the DM might grant advantage to your subsequent check or might temporarily shift a hostile creature to indifferent or indifferent to friendly. Similarly, if the interaction is particularly irksome to some creature, the DM might impose disadvantage on your subsequent check or shift a friendly creature to indifferent or indifferent to hostile. So if you ask them to do something against their nature, they may shift down or up into a different category.
Yeah, like if you
again.
Like if you're asking a town guard to do something and they're pretty neutral towards you, they're indifferent, you're just chatting away to them, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, look, I need something out of the evidence thing. Will you just go and steal that for me?
Yeah.
They're probably going to shift towards hostile because they're like, you're asking a guard to do a crime,
Yeah.
And look, like nothing about this doesn't make sense to me. I get it. It's just like
here's
the thing.
Yeah, go on, please.
Go on.
I was just going to say, like exactly what you said. There is a gulf of experience between 10 and 20 and many shades of nuance lost if you just go 10 or 20.
Yeah, it's quite binary. It's also that's most of a page, by the way. Like if you look at this starts at the very end of the previous page.
The most like condensed, slimmed down version of that.
Like this is a full page if you include the little influence action intro paragraph there on the previous page and bump it onto this page. It's essentially a full page for this one rule,
and so much of it is unnecessary text as well.
It is, and like it talks about like I feel like we talked about this in the podcast before. You and I definitely talked about it.
I think we briefly mentioned it in the last one, but I think we've gone into much more detail here maybe. If we haven't and we're just being old men and forgetting things, sorry. But yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I just feel like it's saying here's the thing. You have to do there's 3 parts to an influence action.
Mm-hmm.
There's the attitude, there's the interaction, there's the ability check.
I feel like you've collapsed.
Then you need to look at the attitude, and there's 3 types of attitude someone can have with you, and you need to examine which one that is. So I need to look at a situation, and I need to go, is this shopkeeper indifferent, friendly, or hostile? Okay, they're this one. Then I need to consider what the interaction is like and make adjustments accordingly. Then I need to ask you to make the ability check based on the numbers that are written here. I do all of this already in what is maybe 3 seconds, if not less. I'm chatting with someone goes to the shopkeeper. I know what the shopkeeper's like. I know in my head who they are, what they're like, what their preferences are. I know, like, do they like talking to strangers, or do they prefer if people leave them alone? Are they pro-government? Are they anti-monarchy? What are they? So when you come and ask a question, I will think about it for all of 2 seconds, and I will think I will factor in all these things, and I will go, yeah, sure, I'll set a DC based on what I think is fair, like a dungeon masters are one to do. It's what our purpose is.
We have
This is an
absolutely
entire
talked about this before. We've had
Yeah.
this literal exact conversation in the last episode.
Well, I'm doubling down on it, because
Well, I'm
yeah,
quadrupling down because I'm agreeing with you again.
because yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, here's an entire page of rules to instruct you on the multiple intricate components, like literally, three separate sections, one of which has three sections unto itself. The other one is a bit of the middle one, interaction, is a bit of a free-for-all modifying state.
Yeah.
And then the ability check at the end has a 6-point chart that you need to decide where you land on. And I'm like, that's great. I could just make that check in a fraction of the time with like none of this, because I already, as a dungeon master, I already do all of these things. I don't necessarily have set D20 stuff and all that, but I'll be like, I know that if you go to the shopkeeper who you previously broke something in their shop, they're probably going to be hostile towards you, and they're reluctant to help you. And when you're asking for a discount and trying to roll a persuasion check, I'm going to be like, okay, well, look, you can try, but you might have disadvantage, or it might be a 25 DC, because the likelihood that this guy's going to give you anything is so slim.
Yeah.
And like, but that's how I already do it. It just seems really, really weird that they would give us this huge page of like stuff that, you know what it does? It kind of like, it turns what is the role-playing aspect of the role-playing game, like the social interaction, the parts where we talk in character to each other at the table. It takes that and it turns what is, and forgive my phrasing, this comes across a little bit like a little bit artsy, but what is like role play and character and like, all the kind of fun, kind of loose, almost like, I don't know, what would you call it? Like, it's like it's taking like an artistic moment and it's turning it into numbers.
Yeah, it's
and going, what category you're in, cool, and can that category be modified? And now apply this number to that category and try to beat that number, instead of just going, hey, you're talking to this character likes you, so the DC is going to be low, and just
Yeah, it's a weird one, and like I recently was watching a video, and Chris Perkins popped up in it for a second where he was talking about the new players handbook. I think it might have been a Bob World Builder video actually. Well, no, it was. It absolutely was. That's what it was. It was the Bob World Builder video about exhaustion.
oh yeah,
And there's a bit in it where man with hat. Why can I not remember his name? Chris Perkins.
Chris Perkins.
Man with hat. It's either Chris Perkins or Kevin Feige. So with Chris Perkins,
Sure. Those are the only two men with hats I know.
Do you see me wearing a hat? No, exactly.
No, not today, no.
But yeah, with Chris Perkins, he was saying that a lot of what the work that he is doing in the 2024 Dungeons Masters Guide Player Handbook, that kind of stuff, it's going to be to do with helping new players get to grips with D&D. And I think this is where that's coming from, and he specifically shouted out helping new DMs as well. So I think this is where that is coming from, and that kind of a thought process of not necessarily like applying the mathematics to the performance of D&D like you were saying, but I think maybe
Thank you. Performance is the word. I was trying to say turning performance into like mathematics.
Yeah.
Thank you. Continue.
Yeah, I think it's more so maybe an attempt to give like a framework for newer DMs. That like if you don't,
I can see that.
because like me and you are very, very used to at this stage, like taking into account like an NPC's attitude, what they're asking the NPC, where the NPC is from, what's kind of culturally acceptable in the area of that NPC is from, and all that, and kind of factoring that into like how hard a DC check should be within a matter of like milliseconds in our brain. Like as soon as it's heard, we're like 16. Do you know that way?
Yeah, because we just know what feels.
Yeah.
What number feels right, because we know kind of where it should fall about. Yeah.
Yeah, but that comes from trial and error. That comes from the fact that me and you have both played and ran an awful lot of D&D now. Like we've both been running games for multiple years at this stage. Like
7 or 8 years. Yeah.
I'll put it this way: if I was like generally speaking, me as I am now, I'm not a fan of the way this has been done. I think it's running contradictory to the main thing that they've been espousing for this new DMG, which is we're like streamlining things, we're making it easier to get into, continuing what we did in 5e, which brought in so many new people and helped so many new people get into D&D, which was making things like simple, easy, fun, so you can get to the really fun parts of the D&D, the performance, the combat, everything else, all that stuff. at the same time, I can kind of see if I was a brand new DM, and I was like, oh, I don't know what the DC has said it, and I looked and I was like, oh, cool, there's rules for this, so this is the way it works, and then like, but then I think as I use that maybe and get more experienced as a DM, I would diverge from this. Like if this goes through in the playtest, I'm just pretty much not going to use it. I'm just going to continue to rule DC checks the way I do now.
Yeah, like I totally get that. Like I said at the start, I do all this anyway, just but I do it in a moment rather than on a page of text. I do feel that what they've given us, whereas it is a good framework, and yeah, if I've never seen someone play D&D, because again, when we started playing, we watched Critical Role and stuff
Oh
as
yeah.
well. And like honestly, nothing will help you learn the game more than seeing other people play it and seeing the flow of the game. But I totally understand that, like, not totally like if I don't know, not knowing what to ask for and what to look for and what to consider
Yeah.
when it comes to a social interaction, because again, that is, even if you're just saying, even if you're not like speaking in character and you're just saying, oh yeah, the shopkeeper says that he can't really do a deal for you today because he doesn't have the money to spare to make discounts or whatever, or something like that.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk in character, you can just talk in the third person and describe what the person is saying. But even if you're doing that back and forth, there's still a level of social interaction there that I feel like something this dense is a little bit hindering on, because like nothing, like we know there's some combat. No one likes middle of combat having to bust out the book and read through a spell that's 3 paragraphs long.
Yes.
We like to know what we're doing, going into it or whatever. And likewise, there is a flow, even though it's less rules restrictive than combat. There is a flow to social interaction in D&D as well, where it should just realistically be two friends talking about their player character and their NPC, having a discussion and what they're talking about and what information has been given. The last thing you want to do when conversation is flowing, because it's very easy to play combat because there's rules and it just plays like any other game really. I move, I attack, I hit A, I hit B, I whatever. Like it just has all of the standard things we do.
Yeah.
Social interaction, playing pretend is not something that adults do very easily. So the last thing you want to do when your people are actually getting on a roll with a social encounter and talking to a shopkeeper or to the captain of the watch or whatever is put the brakes on, go and reference this page long of information somewhere in the book, and then come back and go, okay, I finally decided after 5 minutes that the check you should make is this. You need to roll a 20 or whatever,
Yeah.
I feel like I get where you're coming from. Whereas you and I have that, we have a lot more feeling and a lot more instinct when it comes to what we expect a certain DC to be and when to ask for it. I do feel like this is maybe necessary, but I feel like this could be condensed massively.
And
Less hard on the rules. It can run off the same ability check thing it said before, where it's like, easy is 10, moderate is like 15 or whatever, and so on. It could give them as guidelines. It could specify you can pick any numbers in between these as well, but these are just rough ones. If you feel like 15 just isn't quite enough, make it a 16.
Yeah.
And then it could say just a short paragraph on things to consider. Does the person they're interacting with like them? Do the party have something to offer in this situation? Stuff like that. You could just give a couple of quick talking points as to consider, and you could all read that paragraph really quickly, get it done, and then immediately within like a minute or less, be able to go, yeah, I decided that this should be a moderate, maybe a bit more. So we'll say 17 is the challenge, is the rating, and it's because this person doesn't like you a huge amount just yet because of that thing that happened earlier, but we'll see, and then I just feel like it's very, very dense for what should be a very simple social encounter.
The actual text of it is awfully written as well. It is like incredibly badly written. Like in terms of like the use of efficient language is terrible. Like it's really bad.
Yeah,
like
I had to read through this a few times. It's dense. It's and like again, and that's the thing. Like that's like you said, that was the problem with like older versions of D&D. They weren't very accessible because you had to look at like a huge list of rules and you had to know all this stuff. And it's like, man, I'll never memorize all this. How can I possibly play this game? And I think this is more that older mentality where it's like we could have a much simpler format that informs the players of how to do it and what to do very quickly, while also maintaining that pacing and that, everything.
I would literally have it be like a small paragraph explaining how the influence action works, like literally maybe like 3 sentences. You can use your action to influence a creature, and then I would be like I would literally have like 3 subheadings, and it would be like nature of the request, like mitigating factors, and then crap, what's the opposite of aggravating factors?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And that
and
would be
just
it.
like and decide like you're going to add one or two or
Yeah.
three on, or add that or remove that based on the what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's mad as well because they already reprinted that difficulty chart earlier on in this exact same rule set. They should have just stuck that.
Exactly. Just I feel like rather than this 6 point thing about indifferent, friendly, and hostile, and whether they're going to or not going to help you, it's yeah, it's a lot.
Let me
But
read you
Martin,
my manifesto on influence. Yes, Connor.
that's all the time we have for today.
Oh man, yeah, we got a lot out of that influence action there. Rules, rules are always fun. But yeah, I'm excited to see what the next UA is going to be, and whether it would inspire.
Rules help to control the fun.
You can't have fun without rules. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see if the next UA kicks up as much of a fuss as this one did.
I feel like all of them are like shaking things at the foundation, but I feel like that's good though. Like I as much as like there's usually one or two things. We've had two of them so far. There's usually one or two things where people are getting a little bit like, whoa, why would we? No, that's terrible, or that's amazing. But I feel like what we're getting out of things is equally positive as it is negative, and the whole point of this UA playtest is that we can filter out the negative and only keep the positive.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is the system working as intended. If you have any topics you'd like us, or questions you'd like us to ask, stories you'd like us to share, or topics you would like us to cover, please tweet us at MicFlayers on Twitter. You'll see it on the lower screen. You can find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, and Radio Republic. Martin, where can people find you on the internet?
You can mostly find me on the internet on Twitter at SoulSorryIt'sOver, and also on the Micflayers podcast Twitter account at MicFlayersPod, both of which should be below me here on the screen. And Conor, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on the internet at 0.Conor on Twitter, ZeroPointConor, 1N, very important. And as always, every Friday here at 6 p.m. Irish time on the Micflayers podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you all again, hopefully next week. We'll see. Until then, next time.
We'll see you soon, folks.